The following news flash is brought to you by the Lone Star Lowdown, providing your daily bulletins for the commodities market. Today in history, news updates, and the inside scoop into the tides of the alternative. Markets for the 6th of January 2016 open up with gold at $1,093.40 an ounce, silver $13.99 an ounce, Texas crude $35.97 a barrel, and Bitcoin is currently at 431 U.S. currency. Today in history, Monday, January 6, 1958, Gibson patents its Flying V guitar, an electric guitar model with a radical futuristic V-body design. In recent news, here at the Lone Star Lowdown, we pride ourselves in bringing you the headlines of the day without the hype and media bias. As a result, we are always having to correct the narrative. So to cut to the chase, we are sorry for reporting some falsehoods yesterday. The Bundy situation in Oregon is not a standoff or occupation. According to the Citizens for Constitutional Freedom press conference, they are simply reclaiming the federal wildlife refuge for the state of Oregon and its citizenry, specifically all the ranchers that have had to give up lands to the BLM. Dwight Heyman and his son, Stephen, are facing terrorism charges and resentencing. The point of the land burns, which eventually spread from their land to federal lands, was for ranching purposes and not agricultural reasons. We are sorry for the incorrect reporting of the other day. Regardless of who drops the ball, the media or even ourselves, we're always here to correct and clarify. The TransCanada Corporation has filed a lawsuit in a U.S. federal court in Houston, Texas, stating that President Barack Obama's ban on the Keystone Pipeline supersedes his legitimate powers within the Constitution. Through a NAFTA claim, TransCanada is seeking to receive compensation for more than $15 billion in the expenditures and damages it has accumulated as a result of the permit ban. Governor Jerry Brown declared a state of emergency today, ordering California state agencies to move as rapidly as possible in fixing a gas leak which has been spewing 110,000 pounds of natural gas per hour since October of last year. This declaration comes after previous attempts to plug the leak of methane have failed. He stated that, quote, 7 state agencies are mobilized to protect public health, oversee Southern California's gas company's actions to stop the leak, track methane emissions, ensure worker safety, safeguard energy reliability, and address any other problems stemming from the leak. The Lone Star Lowdown is currently looking to fill some advertisement slots. So you have a product or a service you'd like to advertise with us, feel free to give us a call at 210-363-2257. This has been your Lowdown for January 6, 2016.
Good friends, good evening and welcome here on this Tuesday evening, the 12th of January, 2016. How about that? Here we are in our second week of the brand new year and on the Logos Radio Network, where it is now time for INN World Report Radio, International News Net World Report. And my name is Tom Kiley. I am the unbelievably lucky guy that has the opportunity to bring this program to you on Tuesday nights and Thursday nights. I could, I suppose, be a teensy-weensy bit luckier if I won the Powerball that's going on right now. It's over $1 billion or something. It's Powerball mania, at least here in New York. I don't know about where it is, what it's like where you are. They have these electronic billboards for them on the phone booths and stuff. You know, it's about the only thing they use phone booths for anymore. And the thing, they're old. You know, the way they design these things, they have digital numbers on there to let you know how many 100 million it's up to, and it only goes up to 999 million. So that's what it says. I took a picture of it. Anyway, that was a little discussion about luck. May you win if you've got Powerball tickets and do something very positive with the money. In any case, our program tonight, we will be joined by our good friend Joe Calhoun, researcher, activist, filmmaker, and Joe's going to come on and talk with me in about a half an hour. And before that happens, let's just say the phone lines are open right now. So you can call in right now, 512-646-1984. And we'll be talking with Joe about, he like myself, finds the Trump candidacy very interesting, and even more interesting as each week goes by, it seems. For a lot of reasons. Joe and I typically associate with liberal types. We associate with everybody, but a lot of the people that we feel are kindred spirits used to be liberals anymore. There's not many real liberals around. I think there are a lot of funny baloney people out there now. We call them the pro-war left. But a lot of liberals, including former guests on this program, are just going nuts about the candidacy of Donald Trump. Of course, the mainstream Republican Party is going nuts about it as well. So the guy must be onto something. When you can get both sides going crazy and not liking what you're doing, then you're probably on the right track, right? So, and I do not agree with much of what Donald Trump has to say. I think he's all wrong on Iran, for instance. We don't have anything to fear from Iran, if you ask me. You tell me why, if you don't like Iran, call up and let me know. 512-646-1984. Why don't you like Iran? Most Americans don't like Iran, I think, because they've been told not to like it. And, the main reason for that is the hostage taking that happened in 1979. And that's it. Well, it's a very deep story. We screwed that poor country over so many times. And the hostage taking incident was one episode in a long, sad story. And, in theory, one may even feel they were justified in doing that because they were trying to protect their new revolution from us, the United States, who destroyed their democracy there in 1953. That's a long story. But in any case, yeah, I don't think Trump is correct on Iran. And a few other things perhaps. But I think he's just super duper correct on foreign policy, at least when it comes to interventionism. He is by far and away the best person I've heard, I don't know, maybe ever in my life since John Kennedy. Probably the best person running for office on foreign policy of the two major parties that has a shot. I think he's probably the best since John Kennedy, who got killed for it, among other things. But he's just saying things that are unheard of for mainstream politicians, and on both sides. He said that the war, we talked about it last week. We had John Walsh on. I thought it was a really good interview. I got some positive email from y'all. John Walsh writes for Counterpunch, and he's another true liberal who says, what's everybody all excited about Donald Trump for? Hillary Clinton is, or Hitlery as some people call her, or Hillary, is far more of a threat, at least to on a foreign policy basis. And, she's craven, I think. Her husband brought NAFTA in. Her husband killed Glass-Steagall, which we're all suffering from now greatly. How is she supposed to repudiate that kind of stuff? I doubt if she could. But in any case, Donald Trump, very good on foreign policy, doesn't have a problem with Putin. That's throwing the establishment crazy right there. All right. You don't hear much about Russia in Syria anymore, do you? That's because they don't want you to know about it, because I'm sure the Russians are doing quite well there in mopping up ISIS. You don't hear about it anymore. But when the Russians first went in, it was all kinds of Putin's the devil stuff. When what was he doing? He was doing what we should have been doing all along. Trump, he doesn't have a problem with that. Oh, my goodness. Oh, my goodness. Nobody else is going to say that in the Republican field or the Democratic field. Nobody. Said I could work with Trump, with Putin. Putin ends up a couple of weeks ago saying, yeah, this guy Donald Trump looks like he's the real deal. So he's right on Russia, right on Putin, right on Syria, right on Iraq, right on he was right on Libya. He was right on Iraq right back when the war happened. Not like Johnny-come-lately, like some other people. What else? He's right on infrastructure in the United States. He said trillions should be invested in the infrastructure of the United States. Webster Griffin Tarpley says that too, right here on the show. He said it many times. All right. And that would get the economy going again. And also now something brand new that I think Trump is sort of beating around the bush on this thing, but he came out flat out and said it. He said that Wall Street should be taxed. You got that? Wall Street should be taxed. That is earth-shaking, monumental. He'll get a bullet for that alone. Okay? And who else says that? Webster Tarpley says that. And the party he helped create, the Tax Wall Street Party, says that in their name. So how bad can Trump be if he's saying all that stuff? Well, he's going to be a politician if he wins. Well, it's up to us to make them hold their feet to the fire, make them do what they say. But, this guy's got a gigantic ego, and he's got it tied up in his assertions that he's going to fix this country. Normally the big ego could be a problem, but if it's working for you, what's the issue? A guy with an ego the size of Donald Trump, after he's declared so many times, so clearly, I will fix this place, we'll get this place working again, da-da-da-da-da-da. You think he's going to go in there and look like a fool and let it flop? I don't know. I don't think so. Hillary Clinton, her ego, her ego is all about, what country can we blow up next? Let me show you, I'm just like the boys. I'm better than the boys. Anyway, so we're going to be talking about Donald Trump with our good friend Joe Calhoun. Call us, 512-646-1984. How do you feel about Donald Trump? Let me have it. Let me know. The Republicans say, not really a conservative, he doesn't want to destroy Social Security, all this stuff. It's very interesting. In the meanwhile, here at the Logos Radio Network, we are doing another fundraiser at the beginning of the year here, and we'd like you to consider making a donation. We're trying to reach $10,000 by mid-February, and where are we? We're almost at the first 1,000. So why don't you take a look at the website, logosradionetwork.com, and please consider contributing to this effort. There are various prizes up there that you can win. There's, I think there's a weapon being given away. There's parts. I'm not quite sure. I'm not a total gun guy, but I think they're giving away some My Magic Mud, the detoxifying tooth powder, and that sort of thing. So it's a great thing. You're going to help the network continue providing you with programming like this one and many other great shows on this network, and that would be much appreciated. It's going to go for infrastructure to the network, and that's it. It doesn't go to pay me or anybody that I know of that works on the network. None of that stuff. We donate everything. We donate our time. We donate our research. It's all about getting the word out. I've long ago disabused myself of the concept that I may actually get a decent salary for saving the world. It doesn't work that way. You get a decent salary for destroying the world, okay? If you've listened to my program for a long enough period of time, I think you know that I can hold my own and converse about the issues of the day, but I choose to do that in such a way that sheds light on what's going on rather than obfuscate what's really going on in the hopes that, the world will improve with knowledge. Knowledge is the real power, and that's why they continually try to confuse you, bamboozle you, and keep you in the dark. And that's what we try to do, shed some light. So if on the other side I went over to the dark side, I bet I could work on MSNBC or Fox or whatever and make a ton, pushing war and, pushing the lie that Iraq had weapons of mass destruction or something like that. Well, my group, INN, we did the opposite. We had Scott Ritter on before the invasion of Iraq and said there are no weapons of mass destruction in Iraq. It's a bogus reason to invade that country. There's no good reason to invade that country, period. It is absolutely no threat to the United States, had nothing to do with 9/11, and is not trying to make a nuclear weapon and does not have weapons of mass destruction. But, friends, this is what war is really all about. It's almost all war that I've ever heard of is because oligarchs, and oligarchs are, from the Greek word, ruled by the few, a handful of people at the top that are power-greedy, crazy, sick people and want power and wealth, and they can't earn it fast enough. They can't earn enough of it. They can't get it fair and square. Once they reach a certain level, to get more, the only way to get it is to go knock off and rob some other oligarch someplace else who's already accumulated a great deal of wealth. That's what the wars are all about. And they can't get you to go out and die for that. They can't get you to send your kids out to die for that. So they always need to come up with some kind of lie. And with Iraq, it was weapons of mass destruction. You should be afraid because somehow Saddam Hussein doesn't like us and he can hurt us with his weapons of mass destruction. More accurately, he could hurt our special ally in the region, Israel, with his weapons of mass destruction. So we have to get rid of him because he's a madman and he kills his own people and all of that stuff. And that's what they do. They lie. And we try to straighten it out. We try to cut through all of that stuff, particularly interested in the historical record and how things happen. So anyhow, Tom Kiley, INN. Joe Calhoun will be joining us in a little bit. I'm going to take a quick break, our first break, but give me a call, 512-646-1984, second week of 2016.
You are listening to the Logos Radio Network, LogosRadioNetwork.com.
Words, they sound the same.
right, good friends, welcome back. Tom Kiley, INN World Report Radio. This is our third program, I guess, of the new year. And I wanted to talk about Donald Trump tonight. And by the way, I believe, maybe it's the 19th, next week. Yes, I think a week from tonight, we're scheduled for the first time to have Allison Weir on the program. This is going to be absolutely amazing. I hope you are familiar with the work of Allison Weir. She is a journalist from California who some years ago decided to go to Israel and Palestine to see for herself what's this all about. Okay, there's so much tumult and agony and the wringing of hands and politics and everything else. She went over there and she claims to have been shocked by what she saw. It was nothing like she thought it was going to be. It was nothing like what she had been led to believe it was going to be. The Palestinians were just getting trashed. I don't know what else to say. She can describe it when she comes on the show. But she was so profoundly affected that apparently she's dedicated her life, at least since then, to letting Americans know the real story, cutting through the propaganda, cutting through the media bull, and getting to the point of what life is like for Palestinians in occupied Palestine, or as some people call it, Israel. All right, so she'll be on the program. Her organization is called If Americans Knew. If Americans Knew. How many people know about this organization, If Americans Knew? She's written some great books, or a great book at least. I think she has another one coming out. And this woman is, you know what's a good word for her? Righteous. Okay, she is righteous. All right, she is so filled with righteous indignation. But, you know, she's not like coming at you with that necessarily. It's a higher thing, you know, with her, it seems to me. It's her, she's soft-spoken, she is firm and fair. She's not shrieking or anything like that. All right? She is just, you know, she's got the fever, you know, or whatever you want to call it. And she knows the truth and she is driven by it. And she's done an amazing job. She was part of the Palestinian liberation movement for a long time. You know, Gilad Atzmon is sort of, I don't know that he's part of that movement, but he comments on it all the time. And, you know, this is predominantly a lot of, you know, lefties that, you know, the part of that movement that is not the Palestinians themselves. It's a lot of lefties. And it turns out, according to Gilad, let's see. It turns out, okay, we're going to get to John in a second. It turns out that according to Gilad, this movement has been co-opted by Zionist lefties, Jewish groups that have inserted their way in there to speak for the Palestinians. And it turns out it looks like anyway, facilitate just dragging this problem out. Well, a few things that Allison has done lately. She was part of that movement. It has pissed off some of the Zionist elements within that movement, and they're trying to kick her out of the movement, and it's backfiring, and they're exposing themselves as being, as Gilad Atzmon calls them, anti-Zionist Zionists. Okay, so anyhow, 512-646-1984. We've got John on the line in Texas from a certain country. Hey, John, are you there?
Hey, Tom. Happy New Year, pal.
Happy New Year. It's always a pleasure to hear your cheerful tones there. How's it going?
Not too bad for someone who just missed that bloody Powerball by a ball hair, as we say in Scotland. That came so close to winning that sucker. It wasn't funny, man.
Oh, well, you know, remember, we're very good friends if you do win it, and even if you don't.
Yeah.
I got, I guess I got 3 picks last week just for the heck of it. And out of, how many numbers are in each try? 6 or 8?
On the Powerball, it's 5 numbers plus the Powerball. All
right. Well, so if I had 3 of them, and there's 5 numbers each plus the Powerball, right? That means there's 6 times 3 is what, 18 numbers? Out of 18 numbers, I only got 1.
Well, I got 2 numbers. I was 1 digit away from the Powerball. I was 1 digit away from 2 of my other numbers, and 2 digits away from the last number.
Huh.
So as I say, as we say in Scotland, I missed it by a ball hair.
Well, yeah, it's there are many expressions like that. But what else is new besides Powerball Mania in your neck of the woods?
Well, it's funny. Ask me who. I watched a video when I got in earlier today. Ask me who I was watching.
David Bowie, who, rest his soul, passed away, I guess, yesterday.
I know. No.
What day before was it?
No. Yeah, it's Sunday. He passed away on Sunday.
Yeah. Is that who you were watching?
Well, I've watched some videos.
No. You just said you. I would never guess who you were watching. I guessed David Bowie, and you leave me hanging here. Was I right or wrong?
Allison Weir.
No kidding. No kidding. Well, now, isn't she an impressive person?
Very much so. Yeah, indeed.
Is she righteous or what?
I was very impressed. I was just doing some research. I'm going to be on Kev Baker's show again this Thursday night.
Oh, tell Kevin the gang I said hello and Happy New Year.
Yeah, we'll do, mate. Now, talking about Bowie, one of the other things I'm going to do is I don't know if you remember David Bowie, his technique as songwriting early in his career, Tom. He would write a couple of lines down on a bit of paper and shove them in the kitchen drawer.
Oh, yeah, and then just take them all out and shovel them around.
Pull out a load of these papers, and that's how he used to write his songs. Huh. Remember that?
No, I don't. And I remember, when he did Major Tom, which was a very interesting song, I thought, and very much typical. This is kind of almost like the Sgt. Pepper's era, right? And there was a lot of musical experimentation going on. Then he went into the Ziggy Stardust thing, and I never got that, okay? There was so much hype, and it never made any sense to me. It was so weird. And then so I got put off or off-put by David Bowie for a long time. And then I got back into the guy in the 80s when he got out of all that nonsense and he got into some really nice dance music and some really good grooving and stuff. And I think he became more true to himself.
Well, I'm going to use that technique that I just described to try and compose a song for Kev's show on Thursday night. And I'm just going to be using things like receipts from the supermarket, my electric bill, and any old scraps of paper I can find, and just try and compose a song like that. So, all right. It's going to be a hoot to see how it turns out.
Listen, tell Kevin the guys that if they would like a report from the States on the Donald Trump phenomena, I'd love to come on and share with them from this point of view over here.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because I don't know, the Europeans don't quite know what to do with Trump. In England, these idiots went and circulated a petition saying that they're going to ask Parliament to vote that he get banned from entering the country, which is totally ridiculous.
He was talking about tonight. He was talking about that earlier.
Yeah. Well, I was talking about that last week. And now Germany's doing it. I was like, give me a break. And the guy's got $1 billion worth of business in England. They're really going to ask him not to come? I mean, he says, if that's the case, I have to pull my $1 billion out of England. It's a lot of jobs.
Well, actually, all his money's in Scotland, actually. He owns a golf course and a hotel up in the northeast of Scotland near Aberdeen.
Yeah.
And I heard recently there, before he got into this presidential stuff, he was hoping to open a second golf course, and that hit a bump, so...
He's got apparently 2 golf course complexes that he's developing, and one of them is for like £750 million, and another one is for £250 million. And they said if he can't come into the country, he's going to stop them and take the money out.
Well, hell, I would do the same.
Right, of course.
Yeah. I don't know.
Well, listen, I got Joe Calhoun coming up, and why don't you call back a little later in the show because I don't feel like we got a chance to finish.
All right.
And say hi to Kevin and the gang and tell them I'd love to come on and talk with them about Trump if they're interested.
Absolutely, will do.
Hutzman. All right, good friends. We're going to take a break. We'll be right back.
The Indian government may be wiping the smile off of Colgate's face. Activists claim the toothpaste giant patented an ancient Indian recipe they've been using for thousands of years. I'm Dr. Catherine Albrecht, and I'll be back in a moment to tell you more.
Privacy is under attack. When you give up data about yourself, you'll never get it back again. And once your privacy is gone, you'll find your freedoms will start to vanish too. So protect your rights, say no to surveillance, and keep your information to yourself. Privacy, it's worth hanging on to. This message is brought to you by StartPage.com, the private search engine alternative to Google, Yahoo, and Bing. Start over with StartPage.
Is Colgate a copycat? Indian activists say the company's newly minted patent for tooth powder is an ancient recipe, and they plan to fight it. Colgate is brushing this off. It claims a new twist on the traditional formula. The patent calls for red iron oxide instead of red ochre, but red ochre contains iron oxide. The threatened patent challenge could have teeth. In 1995, India fought U.S. efforts to patent turmeric. India won. In the meantime, India is documenting 30 million web pages worth of its ancient herbal formulas. Officials hope this step will prevent companies like Colgate from patenting India's age-old recipes. I'm Dr. Catherine Albrecht for StartPage.com, the world's most private search engine.
You're listening to the Logos Radio Network at logosradionetwork.com.
All right, good friends, welcome back. Great song, European Superstate. Well, Europe's really been in the news, right? And, that's got to do with NATO and the European Economic Union and all the mess over there. Great group from England. Killing joke, European Superstate. And by the way, that's about NATO as much as anything else. And NATO has turned into a real disaster. It was set up to fight the Soviet Union. The Soviet Union's gone, but NATO's still here. Okay, and why? Because just like every empire, like the Romans, they don't have enough troops to cover the world, so they have to have auxiliary troops that they press into service from the vassal states that they control. And that's what NATO is really for, I think, from day one. But now that job is gone, they should dismantle it. It's not needed anymore. The Warsaw Pact is gone. There's no threat from Russia, but they want to keep that alive. Anyway, that's what I think. But we're joined now by our good friend Joe Calhoun, researcher, extraordinaire, filmmaker, and somebody who's got a great Twitter feed these days. And commentator. Joe, welcome back to INN.
Thanks for having me, Tom. An interesting time we are. The best of times and the worst of times.
As the Chinese say, right? May you live in interesting times.
Yeah.
Are you talking to us from right up there on the top of the Continental Divide?
Yeah, right on the top of the Continental Divide. Still on dial-up here on the Internet. Hope that changes soon.
Yeah.
Because I always have to travel at least a mile or so to get a Wi-Fi signal to look at things like YouTube and stuff like that.
Let me ask you, now, friends, Joe lives right there in Colorado, up in the Rockies, right where, on the Continental Divide, it starts going downhill on the other side, not too far. And it looks a little bit like Switzerland. It's alpine mountains. You got a lot of snow there right now, Joe?
Oh, yeah. Drifts, everything, cold. It's been one of the coldest winters we've had.
Oh, all right. It's been a hot winter here in New York. It's been crazy, 70 degrees on Christmas.
The contrast is they talk about global warming in the east. They don't talk about, the new ice age in the west,
Right. Well, last year we had a really, really cold one. Oh, my God, it must have snowed 20 times. I was out there shoveling. And my neighbors, my sidewalk, and my house is 25 feet wide in Brooklyn. That means my sidewalk is 25 feet long, my section of it. And I'm out there shoveling all the time. My neighbors are coming by. I'm saying hello. They're walking their dogs and stuff. And after a while, and this is a very liberal neighborhood. It's New York, so I know that they're all crazy about climate change and everything. So I thought I'd stick it to them. And I would say, if I get any more of this snow, I said, if I get any more of this global warming, I'm going to freeze my butt off. And they look at me like, oh, I guess so. They don't know how to process a statement like that.
Oh, well, I was at the end of May, and it was the first part of June. I came out from the mountains to go to the Left Forum, and it was colder in New York. They said it was one of these cold snaps. And I'm kind of joking around, and I talked to one of the clerk at a store, in New York, and I actually had to buy a sweater, in June for the rest of my stay in New York. I kind of joked with the guy, and I said, yeah, it's all
global warming, huh?
Global warming, and he agreed. He said, yeah, you're right.
Yeah, I know. I say that to them, and they say, "Oh, yeah, well, that's part of it too." I said, "What do you mean?" "Oh, the really cold is part of the global warming too."
Yeah.
Okay. All right. And then it was so embarrassing they had to change it to climate change because and which is the most ridiculous, redundant phrase I've ever heard. Climate change. The climate is never the same from one instant to the next. It is always changing. Sometimes imperceptibly, but sometimes very dramatically, right?
And you always have to remember people. In the 13th century, or I can't remember when it was. They had vineyards in England.
Yes, no, there was a famous warm snap there in was it the 13th century? It was a while back there.
It might have been somewhere around there, but it was I don't think there weren't too many explorers going on in the 13th century. So who knows? The North Pole, there might have not have been, well,
I think that's around when the Vikings were coming to North America and Greenland. I don't know. It's almost like a damn continent, right? That the story with Greenland. You know why they call it Greenland? They wanted to hoodwink a lot of the Vikings to go there and live, so they made it sound like it was verdant. Greenland. That's why the king named it Greenland, as I'm told anyway. And but it may actually have been quite green at that point because of the warm weather and stuff. And the Vikings supposedly made it all the way to North America. And I just see something that says they claim to have found some artifacts in Canada that look like they were of Roman origin. How about that?
Yeah, well, in the 13th century, maybe when the Vikings were going to Greenland, it was green with the vineyards in England.
Exactly.
You know,
maybe it was, if that's when they were going.
You know, and maybe there wasn't a polar ice cap during the summer.
Yeah.
You know,
or not as much
because people just not as much. So the polar bears survived during that warm spell, I guess. You know, when they had vineyards in England. You know, I think people ought to talk more about acid rain, not climate change. Acid rain is one of the.
I think people ought to talk more about chemtrails. I think people ought to talk more about HAARP. Okay, those are the two subjects that are extremely verboten in the climate change movement. You know, and I tell people all the time, I don't need a threat to want to get rid of fossil fuels. They're polluting. They're dirty. I got it. You know, we ought to be able to be on something else by now. I don't need to be scared into that. Okay, but if you're gonna claim that in all the thousands and thousands and thousands of climate swings that this planet has been through, this is the only time, the first one where it's made by people, I'm going to say, how the hell can you prove that? All right? Exactly. Number one. But if you really are so infatuated with that thought, listen to this, Joe. If you're so infatuated with that thought, then be intellectually honest and stop being intellectually dishonest and consider all of the things that humans can do to affect the climate, not just the tailpipe of your car. All right, but the stuff that has been deliberately engineered to do that, like HAARP and like chemtrails.
And don't give me this asinine argument that it's CO2. In third grade or second grade, we learned that CO2 was a greenhouse gas because it made things green, and the plants absorbed it and released oxygen.
Right.
You know, and if you look at how much CO2 is in the atmosphere, it's under 1%. You know. And
it's the only thing. I think the reason they talk about CO2 is because it's the only thing they can find in the atmosphere that's gone up much at all since, in the last hundreds of years. That's the only reason. And now, so therefore, they found something, and now they have to backfit their argument to blame it all on the one thing that they found, which is the only thing that can tie back to human activity.
Yeah, I tell people, well, I guess we better stop brewing beer. We better stop making bread because that produces tons of CO2.
Now, plants grow better and stuff, and there's no proof that CO2 can cause this kind of damage. There's proof that there is more CO2 in the atmosphere, but there's no proof. And besides which, what if this is just one of the universe's warming waves that the universe does? I mean, isn't it warmer on Mars and stuff? I mean, how can anybody say of all the other climate changes, which clearly could not have been affected by humans, we were in caves for crying out loud. How can we say that this one's different? This one's only created by people. Or you want to say it's half people and half not people? Then we just got to wait it out. Whatever. Anyway, that's what I think.
Yeah, what was the human factor in the Ice Age? What did the humans do to cause that?
Exactly. This, and if you go into core samples and stuff, this, it happens over and over again. It's nature is, if anything, ebb and flow. All right. Nothing stays the same. Nothing is constant. The only thing that's constant is change. It's always happening. And sometimes the change is big and sometimes the change is small. But anyway, Joe, let's take a break. We're speaking with our good friend Joe Calhoun. He's up on the Continental Divide in the Rocky Mountains. And when we get back, we're going to talk with Joe about the Donald Trump phenomena. And I think it ties into the Jeremy.
This was a good introduction to that.
Very good. All right, we'll be right back with Joe. We'll be right back with Joe.
Easy.
All right, good friends. Welcome back. Tom Kiley here, INN World Report Radio. This is our, I guess it's our third show in 2016. Let's hope it's a better year than last year. It's the only good thing, Joe, about this horrible situation that we're in is that the longer it goes, it's bound to get better. It can't stay this bad forever, But and maybe Donald Trump will have something to do with that. This is the election season, after all, isn't it? How about that?
Well, I think you're right. It's almost I don't know how to couch my words about Donald Trump, because when Donald Trump said he was running, I thought, that's the last clown I would support as far as candidates, But then one day I hear Donald Trump trashed John McCain's reputation, and that kind of
that would perk you up.
That perked me up, yeah. Like, huh? Why is he doing that?
Yeah.
Then Donald Trump comes out on MSNBC, and I think this was covered by one of your guests a day or two ago, or last week, John Walsh, that Trump said, and I've said this too, that Iraq was better under Saddam Hussein, Libya was much better under Gaddafi, and Syria is much better under Assad. And that's what kind of really knocked me off my chair. McCain kind of was, I thought he was, what was that all about? Maybe he just didn't like McCain.
No, you're right. It started mounting. You know what I mean? It would he said something. He said things about 9/11. Some people think that he single-handedly knocked Jeb Bush out of the race by telling everybody how that his brother was derelict in his duty on 9/11.
Yes. Now McCain, Donald Trump didn't go as far as saying it was a let it happen on purpose thingy or a made it happen on purpose.
Right, and he doesn't have to. He made the point that our military has more than enough ability to have thwarted something like that, and it didn't. Like
in Law and Order. I don't know if you watched that series, but
no, I don't watch
Law and Order. He opened the door.
Mm-hmm.
He opened the door. And regardless of whether he was sincere on his position or not, regardless of whether it was a throwaway position, as some people say, when you open the door, people in 911 Truth, people in the anti-war movement should be running a Mack truck through that door. And
I don't believe it's insincere. He's a New Yorker like I am. Okay, he lived through that. He's here, and you know what? Say what you will about Trump, but he does care. He's one of these guys. He grew up privileged. Okay. And, you have like three kinds of people, in my opinion, who grew up privileged like that when it comes to the salt of the earth that defend the country and defend our society, okay? The one kind you got are the chicken hawks, like the Bushes, all right? Poppy Bush, well, maybe he was in World War II, but these punk kids of his, his son George, who sent everybody to their death and killed 1 million Iraqis. He was in the Champagne unit of the Texas Air National Guard, and he was AWOL from that. All right, but there's so many of these chicken hawks make me sick. And they talk tough, but they were too busy. Like the chicken hawk in chief, Dick Cheney, and he never served. He sent people to their deaths. He got college deferment after college. So that's the first kind. Okay, that's on one extreme. On the other extreme, you got the people of privilege who put their life on the line and served the country, like John F. Kennedy on PT 109. And his brother Joseph Kennedy, who died in a B-17 during World War II. Wealthy people of privilege, and they got right down and dirty with everybody else. All right? And then in between... go ahead. Who?
Yeah, even Carnegie, who was the richest man at the turn of the century or the 19th century.
He's the richest man everybody knew of. It was the bankers that made him rich were a lot richer than him.
He still felt himself as being having his privilege as a result of this country. Yep. So he donated a lot of his riches to the Carnegie Endowment, to libraries.
He made libraries all around the country. Yeah. Beautiful libraries. Yeah.
He was a brutal capitalist for sure.
Uh-huh. Oh yeah, the Pinkertons cracked heads for him.
Yeah.
Well, let me finish my point, though. But in between those two extremes are the damn chicken hawks who are to roast in hell, okay, for sending people to their death when they couldn't even do it themselves. And on the other extreme, you've got the people of privilege who put their lives in danger and in some cases even died, like Joseph Kennedy did, son of the Kennedy patriarch, Joe Kennedy, brother of the future president, John F. Kennedy. All right? And in between, you have people like Trump who were privileged. He went to military academy when he was a kid, but to my knowledge, he did not serve in the military. But the guy has the brains to respect and honor the people who do and the people who did. Okay?
Exactly.
And that is not phony baloney from Donald Trump. Everywhere he goes, veterans come up to him, especially the disabled veterans. He talks about the police that died here in New York. He's a New Yorker. He's real as far as that goes, if you ask me. And I'll tell you another thing, Joe. He has said something that I don't think I've ever heard any public persona say, especially anyone in politics. I've heard a lot of people lament about the thousands of brave men and women that we've lost in Iraq and Afghanistan, right? That's a no-brainer. Anybody can say that, all right? And I'm sure they even mean it. But Trump is the only one I've ever heard say, and I try to be aware of this myself, and I try to always bring it up. I never talk about the thousands of our boys and girls who died in Iraq and Afghanistan without also talking about the million-plus innocent Iraqis who died. And Trump is the only person I've ever heard refer to that. That tells me volumes about the man. Volumes about the man. Especially, and he also says, they died for nothing, he says. Not only does he remember them, he says flat out, they died for nothing. How about that?
Yeah, and then to put his foot forward and attack the leading war criminal monger who actually did serve, John McCain.
Yeah.
And to attack the leading serial killer that is running right now with their whole gang who's going to come in with Petraeus. If you vote for Hillary, you're voting for Petraeus. If you vote for Hillary, you're voting for John McCain, essentially. He has the guts to come after John McCain. That's not – no other Democrat will even do that. There's not one. Bernie Sanders and Hillary Clinton are buddies with John McCain. They are McCain. Like we had this term, Reagan Democrats, in the 80s.
Yep.
Hillary Clinton and Bernie Sanders and that whole cadre of Democrats who were pushing Obama to go to war against Syria in 2013.
Oh, Libya first. She spearheaded Libya.
Democrat.
Yeah, no, there's no difference anymore. Everyone, there's no difference between the political parties. Right now, there isn't. In the past, there's been a great difference between them. Back in the FDR era, there was a huge difference between the political parties. Right now, there is no difference between them. And if we can't put this a difference between them, then I say the hell with it. We scrap it and we go for a new party or something. Which brings us to a new party called the Tax Wall Street Party. How about that?
Well, something like that. But to my knowledge, they aren't running any candidates this year, which is strange. Despite the locals that they have all over the country, I don't understand that. That brings in another thing, another position of John McCain, talking about using the $4 trillion we spent on war to build infrastructure and hospitals and roads. And then to
the same thing Webster Tarpley says we should be doing.
Ice cream on the cake. Yeah. He just said, this week we should tax Wall Street.
That is absolutely unheard of. That's unheard of. That's out of this world. And the guy is saying it, and he's right.
Yes, and I had to go to the
nobody knows what to do with him. The establishment's crazy, and the left wing is crazy about this guy.
Yeah, it's almost like I had to go to the doctor to get a cast because I nearly fell out of my chair again.
Yeah.
This guy is saying that. I've heard these kind of namby-pamby things about we should have a 0.1% tax on Wall Street by Bernie Sanders. I've heard the term transaction fee, but I have not heard, except from other people, the term tax Wall Street.
He's amazing. This guy's like crazy like a fox. They try to shut him down. They take his words and they try to twist it, and he always comes out on top. He's talking about a temporary moratorium on immigrants from Islamic countries until the government can get its act together, weeding out the bad apples, and then jumping on him for that. And then what happens? On New Year's Eve in Germany, all of these immigrants from North Africa and the Middle East go wilding and raping and groping all these women, like 1,000 of them. The guy looks like he's a genius.
Yeah, it was like in Tahrir Square where everybody celebrated the Muslim Brotherhood.
Yeah, hold on, Joe. We'll be right back. We're taking a break. We'll be right back with Joe Calhoun right after this. Welcome back. We're having a great time here. Tom Kiley, INN World Report Radio. A great time because, it's a new year. It's 2016, and it's an election year. And we finally have somebody running for president who, he can't be bought, apparently. The guy's got enough money already. And he's saying what he means and meaning what he says. That's Popeye. I says what I mean, and I means what I says, right? And it is quite refreshing.
He does have some. The only thing I see is that's a fly in the ointment is his asinine position on Iran, that Iran wants to take Saudi oil. I think. Well,
yes, we're talking about Donald Trump. And look, Joe, there has never been a politician that I agreed with on every single issue. There's never been a politician that I voted for who I agreed with on every single issue. And I don't know if I'm going to vote for Donald Trump. It's a little early yet, but, I certainly don't agree with him on every single issue. But I agree with him on the big ones, the most important ones. He's better than, some of the big ones. So I don't know. We'll see. Maybe you never know. This guy could change his tune on Iran also. But you said that Iran wanted to go after Saudi Arabia, and I know people have pointed that out to me. Right? That's not far-fetched. You know why?
Well,
it's not far-fetched.
Why?
You know why? Because Saudi Arabia and the United States and Great Britain and Israel and probably Turkey are going after Iran, okay? So when you go after somebody, then it's fair game for them to want to go after you and fix your regime at home and have a new regime put in that won't go after you anymore. And that's exactly what the Russians did when Napoleon in 1812 attacked Russia and burned Moscow, all right? You know what they did? They retaliated and went all the way back to Paris and took over Paris and got rid of Napoleon. So if somebody tells me Iran wants to go get Saudi Arabia, well, you know what? They certainly have a basis for it because Saudi Arabia is part of the coalition that has been screwing with that country for a really long time, including 1 million casualties in the Iran-Iraq war that Saudi Arabia was paying for the bloodletting for. So you know what? Trump might be right. They want to go after Saudi Arabia. Well, can you blame them?
Yeah, but I don't think that they want to go after Saudi Arabia oil, and that's what he said. And I don't think they have legions of the, what do they call it, the Revolutionary Guard, massing at the border with Saudi Arabia to go into Saudi Arabia.
Right. I think it's not very nuanced to say that they're going after them for the oil, but but I don't expect nuance from Trump. Although I must say he's got a lot of nuanced positions. Listen, our friend Dan Berdoff out there in Nebraska, who ran for Congress out there, is on the line. What do you say we talk with Dan?
Yeah, okay.
How about that? Okay, let's go to Dan now from Nebraska. Hey, Dan, are you there?
Hello, this is Dan. Hi, how are you guys?
Hey, Dan, our good friend Dan in Nebraska. I'm sorry I mentioned your last name. I hope you don't mind.
You hear me okay?
Anyway, so Dan, it's been a while since you've called in, and thanks for calling in tonight. It's funny that you do, because we were talking about the Tax Wall Street Party and Donald Trump and that sort of thing. What brings us the pleasure of your call?
Well, I've been listening to your show pretty regularly, Tom, for a while. I had the pleasure of meeting you and your charming wife when we organized for the
Left Forum, I think, in New York, right?
Well, not the Left Forum, but it was the.
Oh yes, the launch of the Tax Wall Street Party, right? And the United Front Against Austerity.
Too.
And the United Front Against Austerity.
Yeah, United Front Against Austerity, and
weren't you out there for the Randy Credico campaign too?
Radio show back then in 2012, so I've been listening to it on and off since then. And I heard you gentlemen talking about Donald Trump, and I wanted to call in because I ran on a Tax Wall Street platform in 2014, and this is still documented on the internet. There's articles that written about my campaign. I ran on what we called then the twin pillars of the Wall Street sales tax and a nationalization of the Federal Reserve System, the federal nationalization of the Federal Reserve Bank. And we had an anti-war platform that we pushed. I was the only candidate in the state fair debate in Nebraska that talked about, had any kind of anti-war message during that debate. So I was really interested in your topic tonight, and I want to remind you, gentlemen, that there's also another candidate that is mentioning a Wall Street sales tax, and that's Bernie Sanders. So I think it was either you, Tom, or Joe Calhoun that said if someone is opening that door for talking about a Wall Street sales tax, like both of these two candidates that we mentioned, Trump and Sanders, you have to drive a truck through it. And I think it's really important to bring it up. And it's absurd to say that my small campaign or any small campaign could cause a president or a prime minister to carry their platform. But it is important to support their positions for a tax on Wall Street or non-intervention or anti-ISIS or infrastructure building, if that's what they're talking about. You can support those ideas even if you can't endorse a candidate in the whole of things. So
you can absolutely celebrate the fact that, like you did in your way locally in Nebraska, to put the item on the table in a debate and in a discussion, so too on the national stage, Donald Trump is doing the unheard of by bringing all these issues up. In real time, the guy said Iraq was a disaster, a bad idea. In real time, he said Libya was a disaster, a bad idea. In real time, he said Syria is bad. The only guy who said what Putin is doing in Syria is good. I support it. That alone drives the establishment nuts. Unheard of. So your point's well taken. To bring it up and talk about it and support it alone, whether you achieve it yet or not, it's never going to be achieved if it isn't being discussed. And you brought it up in Nebraska, and now Trump's bringing it up on the national stage. It's amazing. Sanders kind of pussyfoots around, and he's very bad on anti-war interventionism, but he is tough talking on Wall Street. But I think people listen to Trump a little more. The converted listen to Bernie Sanders. What do you guys think?
Well, if you can't support, I think you can at least support those ideas that the candidate has. Maybe you don't like Trump, but you can still support those ideas that he has. Maybe you don't like some things that Bernie Sanders is saying, but you can support the things that you do like. Bring those up and push them. Has Trump or Bernie Sanders mentioned the nationalization of the Federal Reserve? I don't think so. Is there a clear anti-war message with either of these guys? Maybe more so with Trump than Bernie Sanders, which is kind of a surprise to me. And then
way more with Trump than Bernie Sanders. And no, I don't think that Trump's brought up the nationalization of the Fed. Who was it? Sanders talking about auditing the Fed at least?
Well, there's a start, but
did he?
Some might say.
Yes, I think he did.
Okay.
But Trump's been talking tough about the banks and the bankers lately too. He did say something about that. You guys talk. I'll look it up while you talk. Go ahead.
I'm leery of him because of his. He's probably connected to those financial oligarchs. But if he's talking about it and he's getting front page coverage with it, then that's probably good for America that he's talking about it.
Dan, it's interesting that you say that, Joe, and I'd like to hear what you have to say about this. But you're out in Nebraska, I'm here in Brooklyn, and that's kind of like the knee-jerk reaction from a lot of liberals. Oh, he's connected with the oligarchy. He's a rich guy. How can you trust him? And
sure. I
don't think that it automatically follows if you're a rich guy, born of privilege and everything else, that you're going to be bad for the country. And even if more specifically, if you're one of those people from New York, because FDR was one of those people from New York, born of privilege, part of the oligarchy, from New York, rich guy, and he was one of the greatest presidents the country ever had. And then another one, born of privilege, rich kid, a guy named John F. Kennedy. Okay? Now, we've had other rich kids since then, too, like both of the Bushes, Poppy and George. They're rich people who went the other way, okay? It doesn't necessarily follow, I don't think, that just because you're from privilege, you're not going to have a sense of duty to the people of this country.
That's a fine point. And there's also a lot more rich presidents in our history that were both a benefit and disasters for the country as well. So, yeah, you have to be very critical and keep an eye on them and keep them in line. But if they're putting out a Wall Street sales tax for what I read a Bloomberg article that we could look at that and say there's going to be, with Trump, he's looking at a Wall Street sales tax for infrastructure development. I don't know. Am I stretching that article too far? Did you guys see that Bloomberg article? Oh, yeah.
But I don't think he went into too many details on that. But he said, he opened the door. He didn't. I didn't see a lot of detail in there. But the fact,
he talked about infrastructure repeatedly. Mm-hmm. About instead of spending the $4.3 trillion we did in destroying countries' infrastructure and murdering their people, that we could have spent that $4 trillion on the infrastructure of this country. And
he said that about the money spent in Iraq and Afghanistan and everything. But Don, I think Dan's point, and I agree, has he linked the Wall Street tax to infrastructure? That's my question.
No, I don't. Well, Chris Reef sent me some information because I sent out this email, and I had to almost deal in hyperbole about Hillary Clinton because she is the worst candidate of this time, probably of this century, to be elected, because she's going to have Petraeus back in there and the whole gang of Anne-Marie Slaughter and Susan Rice and Samantha Powers. But the thing is that Chris sent me a link that if you go to Trump's website, on his tax policy, he hasn't linked it yet. And at least Chris says, hey, it's just a, he's coming from the idea that it's, I don't know, I haven't talked to him yet, but that this is a throwaway position. This is something he's just doing.
Well, we're heading into break, so we're going to have to throw this away for 1 second. Gentlemen, stay on the line.
This is the Logos Radio Network.
Good friends, welcome back. Tom Kiley here, INN World Report Radio every Tuesday and Thursday night on the Great Logos Radio Network. We're talking about the Donald Trump phenomena, which, by the way, is not just happening here in the United States. All right, you've heard me say it on the show before. The world is angry. Okay, we used to have political systems that at least had multiple parties in them. In this case, two parties. In England, basically two parties: the Labour Party, the Conservatives, all right, or the Tories. That had a real divergence on issues. Now it's all squashed together. That both sides been bought off. It's very blatantly being controlled by the same people, the same money power, and the population of the world is getting sick and disgusted of it. It's not just here. That's why Donald Trump is so popular, because of this. People are getting fed up. But it's in England now. Jeremy Corbyn, the guy who's running the Labour Party. The establishment is freaking out. They can't stand it, but the people love him. All right, same thing here. Donald Trump. The establishment is freaking out, but lots of Republicans love him, and a lot of Democrats apparently too. Okay, and then you've got Marie Le Pen in France, the National Front, far right wing, usually on the fringe, coming much closer to getting better numbers in the parliament. People are disgusted. The Podemos party in Spain, people are disgusted. Okay, it's come from nowhere. The Syriza party in Greece, people are disgusted. It's come from nowhere. Now in Portugal, for the first time, they have a coalition of communists, socialists. These people never could even talk to each other. They've got a huge block, second only to the center-right party that ran the country. That center-right party doesn't have enough to form a government anymore. These people have to be dealt with. It's a phenomena going on around the world. And we've got our good friend Joe Calhoun talking about it with us, and also called in Dan Berdoff in Nebraska. Dan ran for Congress in 2012. Was it 2000 when?
2000. Talk to Dan. Is Dan on?
Oh, yeah. Wait a second. I'm sorry. Hold on, Dan. Hi, Dan. Are you there?
Yes, 2014, I ran for U.S. Senate against Ben Sass.
In Nebraska. And
Nebraska.
Correct me if I'm wrong. You ran on the Tax Wall Street Party ticket, no? Line, right?
I ran on the Tax Wall Street Party ticket, and we were looking to establish the party on the ballot in Nebraska. And I tell you, I'm skeptical of Trump. And it seems like but to his credit, he seems to correct himself when he knows he's wrong, when he sees he's wrong. So so maybe we can put pressure on him. He can be pressured by some regular Americans to push the Wall Street sales tax and the nationalization of the Fed. Because seriously, Tom and Joe, even if Mephistopheles was calling for a tax on Wall Street, I would say a Wall Street sales tax is a good idea. And I would push it. And I wouldn't depend on Trump to push it or Sanders to push it or any others to push it, because I know in 2014, we campaigned for months on the street here in Nebraska, and that includes in rural communities, in the heart of North Omaha, one of a pretty rough place, a very, very diverse community. We were campaigning in Hispanic Grand Island, in African-American North Omaha, and people on the street love the Wall Street sales tax and seizing the Fed when they understand it. And I cannot for the life of me understand why no one is running on this during this election cycle. It boggles my mind. I mean, you got two guys, both right now, I think, as of this date, are leading the polls in the Democratic Party and the Republican Party. If I'm not mistaken, both are on the top of the polls. Both are talking about taxing Wall Street in one form or another. And why is no one else doing this on a national level, or trying, at least trying to do it, at least trying like we did in 2014? But anyway,
well, I think,
what do I know? I'm just a guy.
Well, no, you're not just a guy. You rolled your sleeves up and you ran for Congress, and you talked about this. And as you just related to us, you talked to real people. Go ahead, Joe.
Yeah, we talked to.
I think instead of being passive citizens too, once we elect someone that goes on these positions, we need to get in there and hold their feet to the fire. You know, Johnson ran as a peace candidate against Goldwater and then escalated the Vietnam War. You know, so as I told someone, I don't trust Trump as far as I can throw him, but his positions are music to my ears, you know, are music to my ears. When I hear him attack Hillary on Libya, and she is the worst candidate that is running, that is music to my ears. And if Donald Trump had not attacked her on Libya, Bernie Sanders nor Martin O'Malley would have cornered her on that in the last Democratic debate.
To his credit, it had to be brought up in the Republican debates. They had to ask the other candidates, well, you know, what about all this interventionism? Has it worked out? That's because Trump brought it up. And Cruz and Rand Paul both said, well, to my shame, a lot of my fellow Republicans supported this stuff, but no, it hasn't worked out. And the rest of them hemmed and hawed on it and all that kind of stuff. So he gets a lot of credit for bringing it up.
And then even Ben Carson came around. Chris Matthews talked about the coalition in the first time in a long time in history of the paradigm shift in the Republican Party to an I can't remember the word he used. I don't know if it was anti-war, anti-imperialist, or non-interventionist position in the world. And he included Donald Trump at the top, Ted Cruz, Rand Paul, and Ben Carson, because I think Ben Carson made a recent trip to Jordan, and it kind of changed his view on regime change position. But Chris Matthews was almost giddy talking about this paradigm shift in the Republican Party. And then what do you have in the Democrat Party? The leading candidate is the worst war criminal monster in the world. I mean, it's almost we're living in a bizarro world that everybody got transferred.
I don't know if she's the worst. I think, Bush has got a lot more blood on his hands, but she's certainly no prize. I'll say that.
Well,
she wants to outdo Bush, I think.
Yeah. Well, any party.
Well, it's like what
has in the past run on an anti-war platform. Are they just going to put that up on the shelf this election cycle, or are they going to run on? I mean, where is the anti-war candidate in the Democrats or the Republicans?
Well, hold on, Dan. You bring up an interesting point. Now, I don't know. Did you get a chance to listen to our show on, what was it, Thursday night or Tuesday last week? I think it was Thursday night when we had John Walsh on the program. Did you have a chance to listen to that show?
I did not hear that one.
Go to the archives. It's a keeper.
Yep.
I got some nice positive email from the listeners on that one. John Walsh is a lefty who I really respect because he is a true anti-war person. He's not like all the rest of them who set it out because it was Barack Obama in the White House, one of our people. No, the anti-war movement died when a Democrat and the first black Democrat, the first African-American president. Oh my God, we can't argue. And they just been gone for the last 8 years, which is abominable if you ask me. But in any case, John Walsh was on, and he was talking about all of this stuff, and there's something that I have dubbed the incompetency defense. Okay, that oligarchs use. They make it look like, oh, it's just a big accident. Oh, it's just nobody could do any better. We're the best and the brightest, and we tried really hard, but it's just so complicated and it's so hard. This is what they blame the collapse on in 2008 on. This is what they blame 9/11 on. Okay, nobody could have done better. Sorry, we're just not as competent as we need to be, but nobody could be. The incompetency defense. Do you know, guys, Donald Trump, I've never heard anybody do this. He even called that into question in Biloxi, I think it was about a week and a half ago in Mississippi. He said that it's all incompetence. It's gross incompetence everywhere now. It's total incompetence. There's no accountability. It's all garbage. Nothing's working. It's a big mess everywhere you look. The economy, the foreign policy, everything. And then, guys, he said this, and some people think it's so bad that it's more than just incompetence. It's something else. What do you think of that?
I think that's probably accurate.
And it's pretty damn gutsy to say, too.
Health-conscious consumers are ditching plastic food containers, worried about leaching chemicals. Are they being health-wise or just paranoid? I'm Dr. Catherine Albrecht, and I'll wade into the controversy over plastics and health next.
Privacy is under attack. When you give up data about yourself, you'll never get it back again. And once your privacy is gone, you'll find your freedoms will start to vanish too. So protect your rights, say no to surveillance, and keep your information to yourself. Privacy, it's worth hanging on to. This message is brought to you by StartPage.com, the private search engine alternative to Google, Yahoo, and Bing. Start over with StartPage.
Concern over plastic is rising, prompted by some studies that say compounds in water bottles and food packaging can cause cancer, infertility, and birth defects. But is ditching plastic a good idea? Most concerns focus on BPA, a compound used in plastic softeners. Some scientists say these compounds leach into food and drinks, but the plastic industry says otherwise, noting that experimental findings have not been repeated. Until scientists can agree on plastics, what should we do? Personally, I avoid plastic bottles and packaged meals. After all, fresh food can only do us good. I'm Dr. Catherine Albrecht for StartPage.com, the world's most private search engine.
Be kidding about chemtrails.
Live Free Speech Radio, LogosRadioNetwork.com.
Something wrong! Man, I swear something's wrong. Something's wrong! I don't think I'll be around here long.
Something's wrong. Yes, sir. I think that's Junior Watson, right? Anyhow, that's why we play the song, because something's wrong, for sure, and we're trying to talk about what's wrong. And in that regard, we've got our good friend Joe Calhoun on the line. And caller Dan Burdoff from Nebraska called in. Might as well say the phone lines are open, 512-646-1984. If anyone else would like to call in, we'd love to hear from you. But meanwhile, Dan ran for Congress in 2014, which is extremely admirable, Dan. I can't say that I did that, but I really would love to someday, and I respect you a great deal for doing it.
Hey, thank you very much, Tom. I really appreciate that. And thanks for graciously letting me come on your radio show and crashing the boards here. I don't want to hang my hat on that. We're still active and doing what we can. And we talk a lot about politicians that hang their hat on something they've done, their past performances. But we can also talk about parties or even groups that do the same thing, that hang their hats on things they've done in the past. And I encourage third parties as well to help talk about these types of things like the Wall Street sales tax and the nationalization of the Federal Reserve, because although these are historically democratic principles from the Democratic Party, we got to inject this back into that Democratic Party and reignite the New Deal Party, the New Deal branch of that Democratic Party. So definitely need people to keep active. There's lots of races. If you were running a national campaign, say for president or anything, there's 5 states easy that you could easily get on the ballot nationwide, and then there's a few others that would take a little bit of work. If you were organized well, you could do that. But we need people to step up and do that for sure.
Well, Dan, that's the fascinating thing about Donald Trump. He's not a Democrat, or at least he's not running as a Democrat. Okay, I don't think Donald Trump is a Democrat or a Republican. He's a businessman. Okay, and he supports both parties. But he's like Bloomberg. Bloomberg, the mayor in New York for 3 terms, the creep that said he wasn't going to take a 3rd term, and then he did. He's a Democrat too, basically, anti-gun guy, all that good stuff. And he knew he could not ever get on the ticket as a Democrat, so he joined the Republican Party. I think Trump is probably more Republican than Democratic, but he joined, or at least he's running as a Republican, and he's mopping shop over there, and they don't know what to do about it. But as you point out, so many of his positions you would expect to hear from a liberal or from a Democrat, and that's another thing that's got the conservative base in the Republican Party having to really scratch their heads, because a lot of people like what he's saying, but at the same time, he's clearly not a dyed-in-the-wool, Malthusian, Austrian school Republican either.
Yeah, and I suppose there's places in both parties for that, for those Malthusian types, as you call them. There's places in both parties for that. And definitely people of goodwill, as they say, need to step up and make their voices known in both of those parties if that's their choice to fight that stuff. Because there's quality history in both of those parties that can be retaken. When we campaigned, we met plenty of New Deal Democrats, people who still knew what that meant. And we even met Lincoln Republicans, if you can believe that or not. But there are some out there that know what that means and that they still have that wish for that party. So there's goodwill in both of them.
There's good people on both sides, and that's what we try to access here on INN World Report Radio. We are dedicatedly, decidedly, consciously transpartisan since day one, since we started INN. We're transpartisan. There's no question about it, and that means that you talk to the good people in any situation, any party, especially when they're making sense on an issue. It makes no difference. I can't talk to none of this preaching to the converted. None of this. I can't talk to them because they're not on my side stuff.
Yeah, I agree completely. There's good people on both sides, and if you can talk to them at the ground level, then you've got something going. And if these candidates can do that, I have more power to them, I hope. But the point that I wanted to bring up with you guys that we've talked about already, and I just wanted to restate, is that you got to hold their feet to the fire, and you have to, if they're going to open the door, just like you gentlemen had said earlier tonight, if they're going to open the door for an issue, grab that issue and take it and go with it. And if they're not going far enough on an issue, ask them why. Challenge them. I think that's...
Well, I'd like to ask both of you gentlemen a question. Unquestionably, they all have big egos to run for president. Hillary's got one of the biggest ones out there. But certainly Trump does, and he makes no bones about it. Trump talks about his ego. Trump puts it on display. He's not trying to hide it. He's not trying to say that he's something other than that. But when a guy like that who loves to win, I mean, I never watched this show. My mother-in-law loves it, The Apprentice and You're Fired and all that stuff. But clearly the guy has a huge ego. He likes to win. He likes to play hard. The fact that he's tied that ego of his to restoring this country makes me feel like, hey, he can't have it both ways. He can't put his tremendous ego on the line, on the record, saying, if you elect me, I'm going to fix this place, I'm going to clean it up, and then pull a 180 once he gets in and destroy the country even more. How do you guys feel about that?
Yeah, that's one of the most interesting things about him, because I've never watched him, never wanted to watch the show The Apprentice. I thought he was just an Archie Bunker blowhard, But I've been watching this guy, and, the body language tells me that there's a scintilla, some sort of sincerity in what he's saying. I don't trust any politician,
He's also self-effacing. He shrugs his shoulders. Hey, what you see is what you get. It's me. What can I tell you? And then
he had that. There was that thing on Jimmy Kimmel. Did you see that?
Yes,
Jimmy Kimmel came out with a children's Trump book.
Yeah. Yes, that was very funny. That was very funny.
It was like a cat in the hat,
Right. And that was self-effacing. That was self-effacing.
Yeah, I mean, he takes that. Trump didn't, walk off the stage or anything.
Right, and I think you can appreciate. He's been on Saturday Night Live a bunch of times. What do you think about that aspect, Dan? The guy's got a huge ego, but he's laid it on the line. He's invested it in restoring this country. Do you think that he's really a wolf in sheep's clothing, and that if he ever did become president, he'd do a full 180 on that and portray himself as a total failure vis-a-vis what he said during the campaign?
Well, what does it mean for him to restore America? I mean, his idea of restoring America might be a lot different from yours and mine. So I think that's something.
Well, what he's enumerated in fixing the infrastructure to places crumbling, jobs for people, putting people back to work, restoring the greatness of this country. He talks a hell of a lot about trade, okay, and how we're getting screwed in all these trade deals. I mean, back in the day there were tariffs. He talks about all the jobs that have been shipped overseas, bring them all back home. That's what he talks about.
Unions when we do that, Tom? Are we going to bust unions when we do that? What does that mean for him? I mean,
well, first of all, unions are busted. Okay, and unions are necessary. If you create an environment where they're not necessary, it's a little bit different. But something that is interesting that he has said, he wants to get rid of illegal immigration. All right, that right there is suppressing wages. Illegal immigration is severely suppressing wages, and he knows it. And if you get rid of that, then the free, quote unquote, free market is going to improve wages right there. No?
I
I think that's an interesting point for sure. And
that's a Donald Trump point.
The type of thing that we have to look at. Yeah.
That is a Donald Trump point. That he not only wants to block illegal immigration, but he wants to take illegal immigrants and say, sorry, you got to go back and come back legally. You get rid of all the illegal immigration in this country and wages go up, because I disagree with George Bush who said, well, thank goodness we got all these here immigrants because they're doing jobs Americans will do any job, but they want to get paid a decent wage to do it so they can support their families.
Yes.
Well, that's Donald Trump. He talks about illegal immigration. But, Joe, you get the floor when we get back. We're taking a break here. Dan Berdoff called in from Nebraska. Oh, yeah, there goes Steve Howe with that hollow body Gibson. I love the way he plays that guitar. And in any case, this is Tom Kiley. This is INN World Report Radio. We come to you on Tuesday and Thursday nights here on the great Logos Radio Network. And we're joined tonight by, Joe Calhoun up in Colorado. And a caller just called in, and he's actually been on the line for a while now. Dan Berdoff in Nebraska. Dan and I had the pleasure of meeting here in New York back at the launch of the United Front Against Austerity. And he's called in from time to time. He ran for Congress in 2014 in Nebraska on the Tax Wall Street Party ticket. And we're talking about Donald Trump and his impact on the 2016 election. I think it's going to go far beyond that. And that's what we're talking about tonight. So I hope it's interesting. Joe, you were just going to say something before the break.
I almost forgot what I was going to say. But if you're going to use Trump, and a lot of people, a certain cadre of people that I associated myself said that Trump was going to be the Samson destroying the Republican Party, bringing down the pillars, of the temple of the Philistines. Well, with his positions on foreign policy positions, why not use him to destroy the Wall Street imperialist faction of the Democratic Party, led by McCain Democrats, Hillary Clinton in particular, and also Bernie Sanders to a lesser extent. Sanders is at least attacking Wall Street. But Hillary Clinton is, someone told me she's the Rothschild choice, for the candidacy, and she's getting a free ride. She's hush puppy Hillary on MSNBC News.
That's because they're so damn shallow. They don't even deserve to be on the air to be commentators. But there's no question about it. When it comes to Wall Street, the Clinton family has been very, very, very good to Wall Street. Let's just start off with that little thing called Glass-Steagall that her husband destroyed. Very sensible legislation from the FDR Depression era to separate commercial banks from investment banks. He got rid of that. And what happened? As soon as he got out of office, we had George Bush for a little while, and then bingo. Everything blew up again. So, yes, to your point, I think the Clintons have been very, very good to the banks. What do you think, Dan?
Well, I sadly enough, I think that's true. And, the Clinton record with the banks is pretty poor. And, she was part of that administration, whether she was voted in or not. That was one of the criticisms about them that I remember.
Oh, you're getting a twofer, remember? You're getting both of us.
Oh, yeah. And then what about the protective tariff? I've only know of one candidate that's running this election cycle that's talking about the protective tariff in the presidential level, and it's Trump. He talked about it first. Do you guys remember that? He brought it up a few months ago.
He brings it up all the time. We are getting killed in international trade deals because our negotiators are stupid, and they're not stupid. They're doing exactly what they've been paid to do, which is to destroy. These are globalists. These are not Americans. They don't have any loyalty to any country. They have loyalty to the almighty buck. And what that means is if one country, like the United States, gets too uppity and its people get too comfortable and get too much of a slice of the pie, we got to slam that door shut and get rid of it, lest the rest of the world want to be like the United States. And that's what these globalists do. So protective tariff. We didn't ever have an income tax in this country. We didn't need an income tax. Why? Because if you wanted to trade here in our tremendous, huge market, the biggest market in the world until very recently, now China's going to take over, okay, then you had to come in here a certain way. You couldn't come in here and dump your goods and kill American jobs. There was going to be a tariff tacked on your goods so that it would make your goods comparable to the cost of American goods. That's the way this country always ran. Trump is talking about going back to that kind of stuff.
And speaking of a tariff, there's a TPP Twitter storm tonight that we're going to talk about on Twitter pretty soon. It's just a few minutes. Also, Tom, are you still there?
Yeah, Dan, I'm right here.
Hello. Okay. I've also heard criticism and questions of Trump being some sort of fascist. Well, if that's a fear, why don't we put him to the test and see what he says about someone like Reverend Pinckney? Reverend Pinckney, who's been on your show many times, he's rotting in prison in Michigan unfairly. Why don't we see what Trump can say to the governor of Michigan? If we want to know if Trump's going to have some sort of fascist tendency, why don't we ask him to take a stand on that?
Well, I don't know if you can get through to him, but sure, I'd love to hear what he has to say on that.
Yeah,
I'm not convinced. I'm not convinced. I think that this is knee-jerk reaction to Trump, fascist, simply because he's a wealthy guy. He's a low-level member of the oligarchy. He's not the real big boy. He's a billionaire, whatever, multi-billionaire, but he's certainly not like the super international globalist banksters.
Sure.
You know, but again, we've had rich guys from New York who were members of the oligarchy rise to the level of president, and it was fine for the country. FDR took the country out of the Depression, won 4 terms in a row, unheard of. Okay, that's why the Republicans put in term limits, because they couldn't beat him, because the people loved him so much. Okay, and John F. Kennedy, another one that I talked about earlier, another son of privilege who did right by this country. If you ask me, I'll take a president like him any day.
Sure, that'd be great. Well, I'm sorry to take all your time, gentlemen. I just want to remind everybody that maybe even if Donald Trump is listening, maybe we can give him the message of let's save Flint, let's save Detroit, and let's save Reverend
Flint, Michigan.
And I will say so long. I'm sorry to take all your time. You guys are very gracious for letting me come on. I really appreciate it.
Well, Dan, thank you for your service to, the people of Nebraska in running for Congress, and thank you for undoubtedly the great service you would have provided to all of us should you have attained that office, and I hope that you don't give up and you go right back to it.
My honor. Thank you very much, Tom. I really appreciate it.
Thanks, Dan. All right, Dan Berdoff in Nebraska. We got a few minutes left. We might be able to grab another call. 512-646-1984. I'm here with my guest, Joe Calhoun, up in the Continental Divide, way high up in the Rocky Mountains. Joe, what did you think of that discussion about Donald Trump with Dan Berdoff?
Well, the fascists, I made this point, is that you cannot have, I think you have to look at the paradigm of this, I can't remember his name. His first name was Sheldon. He died recently. He wrote about reverse or inverse totalitarianism, that you won't have, a cult figure like Hitler or Benito Mussolini rising, because we did have the term limits imposed after Franklin Roosevelt's presidency by the Republicans to make sure a leader didn't rise like that. And
I don't get it. When Adolf Hitler was on the rise, and when Benito Mussolini was on the rise, the very father of fascism, there's certain liberals are so stuck in the mud that they call in Trump a crypto-fascist, that he's going to get in and then he's going to. When those guys were on the rise, did they talk peace and love and curtailing the government and curtailing foreign adventurism and all of that stuff? Did they? And then suddenly when they got in, they turned around and turned into vicious monsters? I don't think so. I think that they ran telegraphing to everybody, I'm going to be the son of a bee that's going to go ahead and take over the world if you elect me. We deserve to be the rulers of the world. We're so great. Okay. Trump is saying the antithesis of that, the opposite of that. So how can you deduce from what Trump is saying that he's a fascist and he's in sheep's clothing when the fascists never act like that? Okay.
Yeah. Oh, Polly.
I think I got another caller here. Let me just see. All right. Yes, there's another caller. So let's go here. I think Polly is on the line. Polly, are you there?
I am, Tom. Hi. How are you?
Good. What do you think of tonight's show? Thanks for calling in. What do you think of tonight's show, Polly?
I thought it was great. I loved listening to your analyses about Trump and mentioning, some of the other candidates. Personally, I don't trust Trump, but he is saying some of the right things. I just think he's too chummy with the Clintons, so I'm skeptical.
Well, who do you trust more, Hillary or Trump?
Candidates, quite frankly.
Who do you trust more, Hillary or Trump?
Oh.
I got you, didn't I? Okay, go ahead. You don't trust Trump. All right, then what's your trust level in Hillary? Because it's going to be one of the two.
Yeah, that's a tough one.
Oh, it's not that tough if you think about it. Because if it isn't Trump, it's going to be her. Unless, she's got this email exposure, and that could do her in yet too. But if it continues the way it is right now, it's going to be one of the two. So you tell me, who do you trust more?
I would trust Trump over Hillary. Yeah.
There you go. Bingo.
Had only those two to choose from.
That's right. And that's all you do have to choose from, because unless she self-destructs and unless Trump self-destructs, it's going to be one of those two.
I don't know. I think we should watch Bernie pretty closely. I really just wanted to call in to just give you a really quick heads up on Reverend Pinckney. I urge everybody to...
Go ahead. You only have about a minute. Go ahead.
Okay. And please read his SOS articles and some of the other articles he has on. He is really being abused at Marquette Prison, especially by this one officer, Shredder. He's naming names, and they're not happy with him. And they're really putting really isolating and silencing him. We even think now that they may be keeping him off the computers because nobody's getting emails. So basically, the only person who's really communicating with the Reverend from outside the prison is his attorney. A couple attorneys can call him. But even those attorneys are saying, we're not getting the information we want, we really think the guards are standing over him and intimidating him. So he's very guarded in what he says. So please donate if you can, but certainly write to Reverend Pinckney. And if you go on BH Banco, there's a little script, and we're just asking everybody to make some calls to the Michigan Department of Corrections, Governor Snyder. Hey, say Flint, Detroit, and Reverend Pinckney, I say. And
listen, Polly, we're out of time. bhbanco.org, and you'll find out all the information. Friends, we'll be back with you again on Thursday night. Thank you, Joe. Thank you.